So, I've been wanting to just kind of talk about. I'm a history person, so I love history. I love the history of the Jews, the history of Israel, but I love all history, most all history. So I find it just fascinating. And so I was texting someone the other day about some historical event, and they texted back, "Well, thanks for the factoid," and it just dawns on me that I draw conclusions from what has happened in the past regarding the situations that are happening on the earth in my era that are meaningful to me, but without a lot of explanation aren't meaningful to other people. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about on this chat is just the concept that history sets what has happened before, the things that happened 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Those things are the context for the present. So, 50 years ago, there was, 1967, there was a war, and in that war, Israel regained Jerusalem and the Golan Heights and other spaces in 1967, and that has a bearing on the things happening today. It's a relevant context for the things that are happening today. That's why they call them occupied territories, because previous to 1967 they were not a part of Israel. And so, and you could kind of go back through time and have the same talking points about a lot of things that have happened. I talked about Martin Luther and the things that he wrote in the 1400s and how that affected Hitler and the people in Germany who acted out many of the things that he wrote, and they acted on a belief system that they held because they revered Luther, and I'm not saying Luther deserved to be revered or didn't deserve to be revered. I think he was a complex man, and made contributions that were helpful and harmful on both directions, but you can't really understand the final solution, the solution to resolve the problem, if you don't even know the context for what the problem was, the context for how the Western culture had lived with this idea that the Jews were evil, subhuman, separate, unforgiven by God, all of the things that they believed about this people group. You can't understand what the final solution was doing if you don't understand the history. So that's my point in all the conversations about history. It's not, well, it is that I love history, and so I just like talking about it, but it's really just to set the context, just so that we have a framework for what's happening in our own generation. And what I also hope is to communicate in all of these is that the hatred for the Jewish people is spiritual. It's really, of course, man has logical reasons. In this generation, the people who are against them and have these political reasons because of what's being done to Hamas, and the generation that was in the 1940s, they had their reasons because Luther said so, or the reasons that the Jews were trying to rule the world, or they were all the reasons that were made up, and the generation before that, the Crusaders, they went through killing tens of thousands of Jewish people, or 10,000 Jewish people, and they had their reasons. And so my point is not to debate in any particular generation if those reasons were valid or not, as much as it is to say that I believe that God made a covenant with Abraham, and the descendants of Abraham, biologically, which are the Jewish people, let me rephrase that. He made a covenant with Abraham, he chose Isaac, and then he chose Jacob, and the descendants of Jacob are the Jewish people. And that covenant that was made with these people is still valid. And in Romans it talks about they are made enemies so that the Gentiles can receive salvation. I'm superly badly paraphrasing that, but what will it be when they are brought in, except the redemption of all things? And so God has a plan. I'm not sure that any of us fully grasp the beauty and the elegance of what he's doing, but it is the context that we're living in, and it's our faith is not separate from our politics, and our faith is not separate from the part of history that we're given to live in. They are our faith should be lived out as examples to the generation that we live in. They're not one's over here and one's over here. No, they are one thing. We live out our faith in a generation that faces the issues that are the history of that generation, and we make our choices for good or for bad in hopefully in light of our faith.